Welcome to AP European History, Unit 7, Lesson 2, German Unification. In Lesson 1, we looked at Italian unification. In this one, we're going to look at German unification. And with German unification, it's one of those topics it's difficult not to prejudge or to carry our biases with us in analyzing what happened. We know that a unified Germany will be one of the reasons that World War I causes, and the nationalistic dream of a great big Germany will be the dream of Adolf Hitler that will lead to the great evil of World War II. So it's difficult to not look back at this time period when Germany unifies to see the shadow of the future, to see the shadow of Adolf Hitler over all of this. Without World War I, World War II, would we judge German unification differently? Would we see it as a positive force for good in Central Europe? Would we see much like by and large people see Italian unification as a positive thing, like it was inevitable that Italy would unify and become a nation? With Germany, we kind of have these mixed feelings, even more than mixed feelings, right? We see Hitler in everything, even in a little puppy. Because certainly the roots of Hitler are from this time period. So let's get right down to it. First of all, what we have on this slide is the mustached man who will be behind it all. No, not Adolf Hitler, but Otto von Bismarck, a name in the second half of the 19th century that will be as important, if not more important, as was Metternich's in the first half of the 19th century. And we have two maps. One shows, the top right shows us Austria in yellow and gold, Prussia in blue, and then the other 30 some odd German states in gray. Kind of the situation at the end of the Napoleonic Wars, the Congress of Vienna. And then the bottom right, we see that dark future that we're kind of alluding to. Germany, the greater Germany at its height in 1943, when Hitler has put under control not only the Prussian territories, but he's added Austria, all of what is now the Czech Republic, Alsace and Lorraine, most of Poland, and he's made it all a part of the Empire of Germany. One of the big debates that we're going to see in this time period is how big should Germany be? Should it be a Kleindeutsch, a small Germany without Austria, or a Großdeutsch? Bismarck was a big fan of a smaller, more focused Germany without the problems that Austria would bring with it. Hitler, who will come many, many years later, will be a big fan of the Großdeutsch, a very big Germany. So let's move on. You may be thinking, well, what about if this is German unification? Austria is German, right? Or as Barack Obama said, I don't know how they say it in Austrian. There is no Austrian language. Austrians are by and large German-speaking, German people. They were one of the two German states. Why weren't they the force for German unification? Certainly, you go back 100 years before this, 200 years before this, Austria was the more powerful power, the Habsburg power. With massive territories and holdings, and Prussia 200 years before this was barely a blip among the German states. A lot of that is explained by this map that we keep coming back to in the upper left, that Austria had a complex empire that was not simply German, whereas Prussia was mostly German. And the 1848 revolutions take them kind of in a completely different direction. So if you recall, as Metternich said, when France catches a cold, everyone else starts. When France sneezes, Europe catches cold. Anyway, so France has their 1848 revolutions, and revolutions break out everywhere. Well, let's talk about what happens in Austria. So Austria, it's going to be a combination of nationalism, liberalism, and radicalism, all wanting different things, who are going to simultaneously rise up, inspired by the French, to do things. In terms of nationalism, it was the Hungarians who've never been happy in this empire. They've never felt like they were listened to, heard. They've been pushing back for a couple hundred years against the Austrians. And they rose up and kind of pushed out Austrian forces and said, we want autonomy. And liberal reforms. As that's going on, everyone else in the Austrian Empire is like, oh, well, Hungary's doing this. Let's do it too. So in Vienna, there will be mostly more middle-class liberal reforms, and some radical workers join in, take to the streets. In Bohemia, you'll have some nationalism by the Czechs, as well as some liberal promises. Emperor at the time was Emperor Ferdinand. He freaked out. So he did what almost everyone does in 1848. It's really smart. Promise a constitution, and then later you can go back on that promise. You say, hey, we'll write a constitution, knowing it's going to take a long time to write a constitution. By then, everyone calms down, and you can go back on that promise. Ferdinand, however, his stomach was out of the fight. He was scared. Metternich, he fled. He was like, okay, I'm done trying to defend the status quo. I don't want to die. I'm leaving. So this is the end of Metternich's era. He was unable to stop this revolution. So for this brief time in early 1848, it looks like the revolution succeeded. Ferdinand, his hands are tied. His main advisor's gone. The question is, can all of these revolutionaries carve something out of it? Can the nationalists, the middle-class liberals, the workers, can they create some kind of new government that will make everyone happy? And the answer is no. In part because Hungary had its own pretensions to being an empire. They wanted to push around other minority groups, and the other minority groups are like, well, no, you're not gonna be in charge of this. We want to be in charge of this. We're Czechs. And the Hungarians are like, well, we're going to be in charge of you. And then divisions within the revolution. So there were middle-class liberals who just wanted suffrage or some, mild economic reforms, whereas workers, they wanted more socialist reforms. This allows the government to rally. And they rally around the figure of Archduchess Sophia, because Ferdinand, he's pathetic. She rallies conservatives and then takes these groups and sets them against each other, so that she's able to, one by one, pick off the various groups. She goes to Prague first. Her forces go to Prague first. They crush the revolutionaries in Prague, and then they crush the revolutionaries in Vienna. And then she invites the Russians in to crush the revolutionaries in Hungary. In 1849, Russian troops, tens of thousands of them, go into Hungary and crush the Hungarians. And then a new emperor comes in, Francis Joseph, who will be the new and the last of the emperors of Austria. He will be the emperor up until World War I, when he steps down, abdicates. It will be his heir to the throne, Franz Ferdinand, who will be assassinated, if you recall, that leads to World War I. All right, so that pushes back all of it. It pushes back the liberalism, the nationalism, the radicalism, and reinstalls a conservative monarch. But it means that Austria still has these weaknesses simmering right under the surface, and they aren't going to have the time or effort to turn north and try to dominate and unify Germany. All right, so with Austria kind of out of the picture, distracted, and of course they've got their problems in Italy too, it's time for the real Germany to stand up. Is Austria or Prussia? It's going to be Prussia. Hitler, I know he's volunteering here, but it's not his turn yet. He's going to get his turn later. Again, there's that shadow of this dream of German unification and what we know it's going to try to get past that. Instead, it kind of starts with Frederick William IV, who will not achieve the goal, but he kind of sets the goal. He will be king of Prussia from 1840 to 1861, so he'll be the king of Prussia during the 1848 revolutions. And the same thing that happens in France and everywhere else in Austria will happen in Germany. There will be a revolution, or attempted revolution, in Prussia. Mostly liberal reformers in Berlin and other parts who they've been pushing for changes ever since the 1830s for advances of suffrage, more power to the parliament, etc. Frederick IV, as all of the revolution starts percolating all throughout the German states, he does what you're supposed to do. You promise a constitution. Say, yeah, I'll give it to you. And yeah, we will create unity, because some of the revolutions, the liberal revolutions, were also nationalists. Yeah, we will create national unity. I'll lead this. We'll get a constitution. We'll have a constitutional monarchy. Things are going to be great. And then he kind of lets them run with that for a while, because he knows they're not going to be able to figure it out. Urban workers, they were all in for socialism. Junkers, the elite nobles, they were like, we're not giving anyone. We'll crush them. We'll kill them all. Middle class, the wealthy middle class, they wanted liberal reforms, and all of them kind of wanted a national unity. So they meet in Frankfurt in May to start hammering out this new constitution. And very quickly, the divisions start to show up as the radicals are like, no, 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 we want some economic reforms, and the bourgeoisie, they're like, there's no need for an economic reform. We just want a constitutional monarchy. They debate, should we have a Grossdeutsch or a Kleindeutsch? The Gross, remember, being a large Germany, or a Klein, a small Germany. The Kleindeutsch is basically Germany without Austria. Should we cut Austria out of this? It was talking about, what if we bring Austria into it and we'll have something with Austria and Prussia together. By 1849, they're finally done. They have a new constitution, and they say, hey, Frederick William, we will make you emperor, and not just king, emperor of this new Germany, of a Kleindeutsch. What do you think? By this point, the energy of the revolution has waned. A lot of the enthusiasm was gone because people weren't getting what they wanted out of this whole thing. And he was not about to take a emperorship from the people like that. He said, I'm not going to take an emperorship from the gutter. He will take the emperorship when he deserves it. He sends troops in to dissolve parliament. By that point, no one really minded because no one liked them anymore because they weren't giving everyone what they wanted. And then the revolution just falls apart. There is no unified Germany. There is no emperorship. He represses liberalism after this, brings back in secret police, etc., shuts down free speech, takes control of the press. And things are right back to where they were when all of this started in 1848. He will make some efforts to unify Germany on his own, but Austria and Russia kind of get together and tell him, no, you can't do that. We really don't want to see that happen. So how does it happen? Well, Frederick William is going to have to leave, and instead William I will come in 1861 to 1888, and he will be the one who will make it, who will see it come true. It's really Bismarck who makes it come true. You can see the mutton chop style is still in effect here in the late 1800s, and it had come in, but now the mustache, the hipster mustache, is here, and it's here to stay, as well as they really didn't do eyebrow grooming in those days. Anyway, William, inspired by what was going on in Italy, decides, I can do this, okay? Frederick William may not have, but I'm going to unify Germany, and I'm probably going to have to use war to do it. I'm probably not going to be able to do it by talking. He has to go to the parliament. He goes to the Prussian parliament, says, I need some money. I need to build up the military. I need to raise some taxes. And the parliament says, no, we're not going to do that. So William brings in this guy, Otto von Bismarck, a name do not forget, to get his money. Bismarck was a kind of a lesser aristocrat. He was definitely a genius. He was definitely one of the great political geniuses of the 19th century. Metternich, Bismarck, Cavour, well, that's kind of it. One of these great geniuses. Many people look up to him as a Machiavellian hero. Some see him as a terrible villain, in part because they know what happens in the 20th century with this Germany that he's going to create. And he's going to use 3 wars to get what he wants, although they will be, by later measures, very, very mild wars. Can you have a mild war? Anyway, so he goes to party and says, listen, we appreciate all the talk about voting and taxes and things like that, but the great question of the day will not be decided by speeches and resolutions. That was the blunder of 1848 and 1849, but by blood and iron. This will be done by blood and iron. He basically says, Parliament, you can keep having elections and having votes and discussions. I'm doing what I want. So let's make my moves. And he's going to use 3 wars, 3 very short wars, each one a little longer than one before, but both of them very short, very decisive, and all of them came out in Prussia's favor. The first one is the Danish War, which is a weird war because we almost never talk about Denmark. Denmark, if you recall, is over here. They had the Danish king had 2 provinces, Schleswig and Holstein, here and here, that were technically in the German Confederation, even though they were controlled by the Danish king. The Danish king thought, well, this is weird. How can they be in the German Confederation under control of that when they're actually under my monarchy? So he decides he's going to, in a kind of a nationalistic fit, force Schleswig and Holstein to be a greater part of Denmark, to be part of, to be more directly under its control. Bismarck decides, okay, well, here's my opportunity. Here's my first opportunity to do something. And he decides, I'm not going to do this alone, because you don't want to do this alone, because the whole balance of power thing, if it looks like you're getting too powerful, allies will join against you. So he goes to Austria, knowing he's going to stab them in the back later. He says, Austria, help us out with this. We need your help. The German Confederation's under assault. Why don't you join us in crushing Denmark? And they did. They went up. They crushed a little Denmark. And they took Schleswig and Holstein and divided them between them. One was in charge of each one. And Germany gains a couple provinces. But they also gain kind of this sense of Germany's threatened by an outside source. And they unify to push back. His next thing he's thinking is, okay, so all these gray states are the ones who are not part of Prussia. Blue is under Prussia, it's under the King of Prussia. Yellow is under Austria. How can he get those under his control? He's got to push Austria out of the Confederation. In fact, he's got to destroy the German Confederation somehow. So that means he's got to have a war with Austria. The big fear, though, if you beat up on Austria, Russia is a good friend. Russia and Austria always working together to beat up on Poles or Balkans or Hungarians or pretty much anything. France might be concerned if Prussia gets too powerful, so France could be an issue. So he goes to Russia and says, hey, why don't you go and beat up on the Poles for a while? Russia's like, really? You want us to do that? Please do. France, he goes and talks to Napoleon and says, hey, I'm really not, just stay neutral in this. We got a plan. We're not going to really take land from Austria, stay neutral. And then he went to Italy, and you remember this from the last lecture, because Italy wants land from Austria. Italy, you get into this, and we'll make sure you get Venetia. All right? So we'll kind of stab them in the front, and Italy can stab them in the back. So getting those assurances from France and Russia that they'd stay out of it meant that Prussia could do what they wanted to. The war lasted 7 weeks. This will be kind of a military historians study this because of Prussia used trains for one of the first times in Europe to get a bunch of troops very quickly to a place. They were outnumbered in the big battle, the Battle of Sadowa, but because of new technology and their new guns, they were called needle guns. They didn't shoot needles; they used a needle to set off the cap. Anyways, they used these new guns to devastate the Austrian army. With the Austrian army destroyed, Prussia basically said, hey, we don't want to conquer you. And Prussia didn't want to embitter Austria. All they wanted to do is push Austria to the side. So Austria lost no territory to Prussia and paid no reparations to Prussia. So Austria had no reason to be bitter at Prussia. But they did have reasons to be bitter at Italy, because Italy will get Venetia. So Austria loses some land, but they don't lose it to Prussia. And it just seems like a fight between brothers, between Austria and Prussia, right? They can shake hands afterwards. The German Confederation gets dissolved and is replaced by the North German Confederation, which will include pretty much all of the Protestant states of northern Germany under control now of Prussia. The southern states were no longer in the German Confederation. They were kind of unaligned, but they were increasingly leaning towards Prussia, but they were Catholic, and the northern states were Lutheran. So there was a debate, how can Prussia get them in? A new government is created for this new confederation. The king is in charge of it, the King of Prussia. Bismarck becomes chancellor of the confederation. They create a national parliament, the Reichstag, and rule through that. Now, granted, Bismarck, he kind of does what he wants to, so he doesn't really listen to the Reichstag. He just does his own thing. All right, so next step, how to get these southern states to join him. They're a little resistant, and he believes the best way to do this is a war with France. Because they're close to France, they're threatened by France, France controls some territories that are semi-Germanic, and nothing gets people excited more than a good patriotic war where you're being attacked. So how can he make it so that it looks like France is invading Germany as opposed to Germany invading France? Well, here's what he does. He plans this patriotic war to unify the German states, especially these Catholic southern ones. As soon as he finds an issue that he knows will make the French and Prussia mad at each other. And the issue comes that there's a revolution in Spain. There's different people who could become the new king of Spain. And one of them is a relative of King William. So Bismarck pushes this. He said, hey, it should be, William, it should be your this third nephew or whatever. He should be the new king of Spain. France is like, no. We've got our own people we want to be the king of Spain. So they hold a conference, William and the French ambassador. Bismarck isn't there. He's pretty confident that they won't be able to agree, and the French will get really mad, and they'll get so mad that they'll declare war. But weird things happen. William and the French ambassador talk it over, and the guy who would have become king, he's like, I don't want to cause a war. You know what? I take myself out of consideration for being the king of Spain. Don't do it. So now there's not going to be a war. William sends a telegram back to Bismarck, basically outlining what has just happened. Bismarck reads it and can't believe it because Bismarck wants the war. So he takes the telegram and edits it carefully and then has it published in such a way that it makes it look like William insulted the French ambassador, hoping the French would be so mad they would declare war. And the French were so mad they declared war on Prussia. So now again, it looks like, oh no, Germany's being invaded. We need to rally all the German states. It's just like what happened with Denmark, right? That Germany was threatened by Denmark. We need to stop this. The war was over very quickly. Napoleon III marched out with his troops. Prussians marched out with their troops, and they literally captured Napoleon and forced his abdication. And it looked like the war was going to be over quickly. But this war will be the one that matters the most of all three of these. Don't forget the Franco-Prussian War. This is the war that causes World War I. And a little side historical note of trivia. At the beginning of World War I, Germany, you remember, planned to invade Poland. But Hitler, I think he thought he was as smart as Bismarck, as a genius, so he didn't want to make it look like he was invading Poland with no reason. So he got German commandos, snuck them into Poland. They then dressed as Polish commandos, snuck back into Germany, and blew up a German radio station so that Hitler could claim that Poland had invaded Germany, and he launched World War II. All right, so what happens? Napoleon III is gone. That's it. He's captured. He's done. The French people are like, wow, again? Why does this keep happening to us? Many of the French in Paris decide now is the time for a true socialist people's revolution, a revolution for the people. They declare a new republic, and this Paris Commune, declaring the complete equality of all people, decides to keep fighting, and the French army has to come back and actually crush the Paris Commune, and the Commune is gone. And they quickly then have to sign a peace agreement with Prussia. William goes to Versailles, the French palace, and has himself declared German emperor in the Hall of Mirrors. Now you have the creation of Germany. This is the birth of it in 1870, in this grand victory in this war. And in every step, Germany slaps France in the face. I mean, one, he's declared German emperor in France. France then has to pay to Germany 5 billion francs, and has to give Alsace and part of Lorraine to Germany, this new German empire. We talked about this in another lecture, how on French maps at the time it was the black stain, because they would draw that as part of France, but then they'd black it all out because they knew it was actually part of the German Empire. So Germany is born, France is deeply embittered, and they get to try their third republic, which will be another pathetic republic. One of the reasons that France really struggles in World War I is because of the weakness of the government. All right, so looking at the expansion of Prussia, you know I love maps. So Prussia in 1807, at one of its low points, they're the dark blue here. By 1815, by the Congress of Vienna, remember, they wanted to make Prussia stronger so that they could be the sentinel on the Rhine. So they were granted all of these green territories to become much bigger. And then, after the Danish and Austrian wars, so Schleswig and Holstein are over here, and then the North German Confederation, after the Austrian War, will join. And so really, all of northern Germany by this point is unified by 1866. And then you have the French, the war with France, ending in 1871. All of these southern German states get really excited. They get all nationalistic. They join. Here's Alsace and Lorraine. And all of those joining in 1871 to create the Empire of Germany. And that's the story of German unification.